You're watching our live and continuing coverage from the blockbuster CII Headlines Today Budget Roundtable. I want to introduce now Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General CII. He's the one who's been speaking to all the industrialists and has a sense of what India Inc. is looking out for. Joining us also now, Barun Mitra, former IAS officer, consumer activist. I want to go across first to Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee on what India Inc. as a whole, as a group together, expects from this budget, sir.
I think the most important factor at this point in time is to get the investment pipeline flowing. The investment pipeline is absolutely choked. There is nothing really happening there. So you need to get that back into action. So facilitating that is going to be top priority. Second, of course, getting growth back. So there, part A of the budget is where we would really focus on the vision of the government in seeing some big ticket announcements. Those cannot probably be something which is action plans, but things like where we are headed for in terms of the reforms agenda. This is something that we would really like to see, and which would be focused on growth and investment.
No, but can one budget document, which is essentially just a compilation of the government's revenue and expenditure, actually signal the beginning of the revival of investor sentiment?
Yes, of course. I mean, there's a lot that can happen. Say, if you really look at the taxation part, there's a lot that you can signal and actually also act upon in terms of getting investments back. You need to see how you can broad base the tax system, how you can make it more transparent. These things can be done in the budget. So there are certain low-hanging fruits in the budget which needs to be addressed today, and that's the expectation. And of course, you need to also give a report card of what the health of the country is in terms of finances. That's going to be very, very important. We don't know that because we are into a sort of a cash-based system. We need to probably look at a more accrual-based system. So there are things which can come out in the budget which will give a much clearer picture of where we are and where we are headed for.
So investor sentiment is really down right now. What would you like to do? What would you like to see which would signal to you that, okay, here is what India Inc. was looking out for. Here is what will ensure that India Inc. starts investing money back into the Indian economy again.
So what do we have today? We have a situation where we have a high inflation here. We have a therefore a high interest rate situation. You are not borrowing, you are not investing. Very simply put, right? And second, you have a tax structure. If you have a situation of doing business. The Modi government in the last 30 days have been talking about how you can bring in a situation of ease of doing business. So that's going to be very important. There are certain signals they have already taken in sort of clearing up processes. So what's going to be very important, vital in that is actually implementation. So you bring in, today there are many projects, say for instance, which have been cleared. But those clearances have not led to on-the-ground sort of implementation. So we would like to see that happen. That's going to be most important. So the budget has to be extremely implementation-oriented in terms of getting investments and getting the private sector involved in investments once again.
Okay, K. Raghu is the president of the Chartered Accountant Institute. I want to understand from you, since you work with so many companies and get feedback from so many companies, the ease of doing business that Mr. Banerjee speaks about, what would you like to see Mr. Jaitley do, which will make corporate India feel, okay, here's a government that wants to improve how easy it is to operate in India?
I would fully agree with Banerjee. Today what is happening is corporates are looking at various destinations for investments around the world. Of course, India is a happening economy, and India and China are looked upon with great interest by any investor. And any investment coming into India, any company, any investor would like to see whether there's an ease of doing business in India. Today we have the New Companies Act. A lot of challenges are there. Today the cost of compliance in India is very high. So if a company is coming to India, they would like to know how comfortable they are to do the business. That is one of the reasons I feel today the services sector has done extremely well in India. When we talk about the services sector, we talk about the banking industry, the financial services industry, the insurance sector, the IT sector, the telecom sector has been doing extremely well. The services sector has grown rapidly, but the manufacturing sector has not grown. That is where we need to focus on, and manufacturing sector can grow only when big ticket investments come into India through foreign direct investments, and foreign investors are very keen to see that they find India as a good destination to invest. They should have low cost of compliance. They should have that comfort to do business.
One of the things that's happened, Mr. Banerjee, is a lot of foreign investment investors have decided they don't want to be part of the India story. For example, Carrefour just said they want to wind up and go back home. Now, can just a few policy announcements ensure that they change their mind and decide to pump money back, or will they actually like to see how things pan out over the next 24 months, 12 months, and then review their decisions?
See, if you really look at, and we have been actually in touch with a lot of potential investors into the country, people who are, just look at the last 30 days. The situation across the globe has actually changed as far as India is concerned and the attitude towards India is concerned. There is a huge amount of expectation which has already come up. So nobody is giving up, really given up on India. People were giving up on India, but people have, at this point in time, the hopes are back again. So we have a large number of visitations which has taken place only in the last 30 days, and I'm talking about business visitations. They look at not only the market, but they also look at the huge opportunity of doing business in India. So I think the government in this budget can give very strong signals of both the issues of getting the foreign business to participate in terms of the FDI limits in certain areas. Second, it can also give major signals of, yes, it's easier to do business than what it was, and this is the way we are going to welcome investments, both domestic and foreign.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Banerjee, for joining us this morning. I know you've got a lot of channels that you need to make a round of. I want to go across to Mumbai. Joining us from there is Arun Kejriwal, well-known market expert. Mr. Kejriwal, we saw after the railway budget that there was actually a decline in the stock markets. What would you like to see Mr. Jaitley do as one of the leading stock market experts? What would you like to see the finance minister do which will actually ensure that the markets go from their current levels and cross 30,000?
Well, one thing which is very important is the ease of doing business. The word retrospective has killed investments and partly the stock market. So if there is clarity on law, if some of the archaic laws in this country which allow you to enter but do not allow even your soul to exit the country would help matters.
Sorry, they've mixed it up in it. I apologize. The name is the same.
Wall Street Journal.
I occasionally write for that.
Okay, and also sector-wise, do you think that there will be signals which broadly will indicate that the market is going up, or sector-wise, what are your key expectations, sir?
Well, I think if you talk of individual sectors, the two places where we need maximum amount of concentration is one is the infrastructure. We need to improve our infrastructure, whether it is roads, ports, bridges, you name it what. If that happens, the cost of delivering goods from one place to another goes down, the availability of material happens, and we all know that there is a supply side inflation problem in this country. So all of this can be taken care of if we focus on our infrastructure. And there should be ease of getting in money for an investor and ease of taking the money out once he has made his returns. There should not be two different set of laws, one when you bring the money and second when you take the money out. Two different set of laws, one when you bring the money and second when you take.
That's interesting. Nupur, you've seen the sort of expectations that have built around this budget. Now that's a tough ask for any finance minister PM duo. What's the sense that is being communicated within the BJP about whether or not the finance minister can actually live up to these huge expectations?
See, first and foremost, because I just heard this conversation about the ease of business. Policies related to the budget aside, there is also an actual attempt to make sure that the government machinery, the administration and the executive itself has a single window system which actually eases any new business or therefore investments to come in. So that is something which is, it's a two-way process. It will be done in tandem. Now, when you're talking about the budget, I think we can take a hint from the railway budget that we will do away with populism, and long-term public spending and investment is actually the main issue here. We understand there is a fiscal deficit problem, but then you also have to understand that we are not looking just for the next 6 months or till the next budget. We're looking at long-term infrastructure spending and long-term investment as far as manufacturing sector is concerned. So obviously we'll have to wait for the budget to come out, but these are the hints I think that we can buy some
ideas. What we'll do right now is play out a quick report which looks at the key expectations from some of India's biggest corporates. What is it that they would like to see Arun Jaitley do which will ensure and signal to them that India is a good place to invest with consistent laws which don't change with every year, and gives them the opportunity to ensure that they can also earn returns in their investment? Here is a look at the key expectations from corporate India.
It's not just the common man which is hopeful of soaps from the Modi-nomics budget. The India Inc.'s hopes are also riding high in Narendra Modi government's first ever budget. the industry is hopeful of long-sought tax incentives and freedom from red tape, which has long shackled India's growth. The hopes touched stratospheric levels when the FM had extended the excise duty soap for automobile and consumer durable sectors till December.
The whole country is very hopeful, and I'm quite sure that this new government will elevate the country.
Industry bodies are hopeful that this budget will eventually propel India on the path to 8% GDP growth, pinning hopes on the much talked about Modi's bitter pill to revive the economy.
It will not give you high promises, but it will identify what is the areas which they will focus on. They may not necessarily give you how they will achieve it because the time period is very short.
The health sector hopes that the Prime Minister will live up to the promises he made during his recent poll campaign. Doctors, health professionals and leading players in hospital industry seek an enhanced allocation for the sector.
मेडिकल टेक्नोलॉजी या मेडिकल स्पेस में R&D लैकिंग है और गवर्नमेंट को इनिशिएटिव्स देने चाहिए जैसे ग्रांट्स, सब्सिडीज, इंसेंटिव्स फॉर मेडिकल टेक्नोलॉजी R&D।
सरकार को चाहिए कि रूरल एरिया में जो मेडिकल फैसिलिटी हैं उसको खोलने के लिए जो लोग वहाँ मेडिकल फैसिलिटी चलाना चाहते हैं उनके लिए ज़्यादा सहूलतें दी जाएं।
Will the Modinomics meet the great expectations riding on it? Bureau Report, headlines today.
Welcome back. You're watching a continuing coverage of the CII Blockbuster Budget Roundtable. I want to introduce also at this time Sailesh Haribhakti. He's the CEO and Managing Partner at Haribhakti Group. He's joining us from Mumbai. I want to focus for a moment with Dr. Lahiri on the stock markets. The stock markets are very cautious, slightly down. We saw after the railway budget, they tanked somewhat. Now, given the expectations that have been built up, do you think the markets are at a level where they've got really unrealistic about what Jaitley can do? They're hoping he has a magic wand?
See, this is what people like Arvind Virmani and Nitin Desai will talk about, rational expectations. Markets have fed in so much expectation. Remember, Sensex has gone from 22,000 in May to 26,000, 20% increase. Though there are some markets which have been performing even better. But I think expectations are sky high. And I have a lot of regard for Mr. Jaitley, but he's not PC Sarkar. So I'll be very surprised if no matter what he does, the markets are slightly disappointed.
That's interesting. Let me put that question to Arun Kejriwal, the stock market expert who's still with us from Mumbai. Mr. Kejriwal, do the markets think at this time that Arun Jaitley is some sort of a magician who can wave a wand? And is that why unrealistic expectations seem to have built in, which is why people are talking about a 30,000 level as well, whereas the markets clearly haven't seen any substantial fundamental change to be so excited?
Rahul, there are two parts to your question. Does Arun Jaitley have a magic wand? Certainly no. Is the market unrealistic about expectations? Absolutely incorrect. Market always works on expectations. And let us understand, this rally started when the BJP won the state elections. At that time, we were around 20,000 on the Sensex and we crossed 26,000. So it's a huge 30% jump. Markets build up expectations and they think that something that you're investing today will give you returns maybe over 24 months. People who are now joining the market and expecting instant gratification are in for a disappointment, even if this is a dream budget where everything that you could think of will happen. But if you are here for the long term, you will go back home satisfied today. And I don't think market is expecting any great magic wand act from Arun Jaitley.
Very realistic in your expectations, but there are those who are not. They seem to believe, Mr. Desai, that now that Modi is in charge, he'll fix it immediately.
This is the problem. Basically, people are expecting a big bang reform budget like 91. This can't be a big bang reform.
Why not?
The reason is
because people are suggesting that the first wave of economic reforms has now run its course. You need to bring in the second wave of economic reforms.
The problem is that the reforms that he now needs to bring in are bits and pieces of all over the place, including a lot of stuff which has to be done at state level. The sort of things which the 91 budget could do, get rid of industrial licensing, get rid of import licensing, big bang stuff, which immediately has an impact you can do. On the stock market, I do want to point out that present boom is very much because of large FII flows, not necessarily because of the domestic investor having high expectations. Much of this is FII flows. So I suspect there will be a correction, but I don't think it will be a huge one.
Okay.
It will be more profit booking type
Anshuman
correction.
Maxi, the second wave of economic reforms, big bang, big ticket, that's what corporate India would like to see. The economists are advising caution. They're suggesting bits and dribbles as opposed to a tsunami of change.
The fact is, fundamentally, our economy is weak right now. So, you can't do anything overnight, but no doubt because, for the last 4 or 5 years, nothing's much been happening. The sentiment has been low. I know the expectations are high, but Modi can still do more than what we expect. But for the economy to turn around, it will take time. It's not going to happen in 3 months. If you look at the infrastructure, we have to put even implementation. If you look at the budget can only allocate, for example, money to infrastructure, right? And every budget has been doing that. But the fact is implementation. So I think budget, no doubt, Modi can announce a lot of things. It'll improve the sentiment. But clearly the most important thing is how much the government can implement in the shortest period of time. I think that is the major thing. If we are able to do that in next 12 months, 24 months, we are definitely there for a very good run.
Is with the Liberty Foundation. Now I want to ask you, Mr. Now the question is that you've got a corporate India saying, give us signals which show that we can go out and invest. You've got the Aam Aadmi saying, don't do anything which hurts me, hurts my wallet. Now there is a fundamental divide between being popular with the Aam Aadmi and taking the decisions which in the long run can hopefully set the economy right.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge, a very difficult line to hold. But I think the key probably would be like from the railway budget. It'd probably be more vision than concrete, because the big bang concrete, probably their options are very limited. I think I would expect primarily if there's something on the inflation, particularly food price, because that's what is affecting a lot of people, and that's where much of the anger is coming from. And on that, in the economic survey, there's already a suggestion that perhaps the central government could think of a law to overcome APMC problems at the state level. That would not be easy, but if the government sets a direction that that's what they're actually going to aim for, that might be a plus. Similarly, much of the bottleneck in the food sector, and I was surprised that they targeted hoarding as the first step to deal with food price, because I think the supply chain is not so much bothered with the hoarding aspect of it. Hoarding has been a story of India for the last 30 years, and it hasn't delivered anything. So I thought it was a very negative or a very regressive step coming from a new government, instead of breaking from the past, not being able to. Okay. So if for instance, they do the APMC bit and they liberalize the international trade, so that when the prices are high, it can come back, the items can come in that much more easily, then the chain that we are lacking, the infrastructure chain, might get built up.
I want to go across to Mumbai. Venugopal Doot is joining us at this time from Videocon Enterprises. Mr. Doot, as one of India's leading industrialists, I want you to explain to our viewers, what is it that you think Arun Jaitley can realistically do? There's a huge amount of expectations, but what do you like to see him realistically deliver on, sir?
Well, there has been an expectation from the people who are living of the bottom of pyramid, because they have been assured that inflation will come down soon. But it's not that easy that inflation will come down soon. So Arun Jaitley will balance it in such a way that at least some people who requires inflation to come down in their item, those essential items, the price may come down. But other items, the prices will have to be kept in control, because reform has to be taken future. Last 2 years, there was what we call as a policy paralysis. So no decisions were taken so fast. Decision will have to be taken, and those decisions cannot be implemented immediately, not in about 12 months time, but it may go up to 24 months or maybe continuing for 5 years, as we have seen in railway budget. So fiscal consolidation will be the main chapter, and in fiscal consolidation they will bring down fiscal deficit also, current account deficit also, and some methods will be given by which infrastructure industry will be developed, and inflation will be controlled in time to come, and of course GDP growth, which is very, very essential for the foreigners to invest, that GDP growth also has to go up. One thing foreign investors are today not understanding, that in India there is no scope for any contracts are not getting committed, and there are retrospective legislation. So he will come out with a policy statement on all these, that contract will be kept in, and also that a statement will come that there will not be retrospective legislation. This will give a boost to the foreign investment, which we call as FDI.
The idea of retrospective taxation, that's something that you're looking out for, that there must be absolute clarity that the government can't go about digging into your past and troubling you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dut, for joining us this morning. We'll come back to you after the budget for your sense of whether or not Mr. Jaitley lived up to those expectations. You've just seen those pictures of Mr. Jaitley reaching Parliament, where he will deliver the finance budget in just about an hour from now. 25 finance ministers have so far delivered 83 budgets, both the interim and the regular budget. He will be the 26th finance minister, and this will be the 84th budget.